to get underway. With the fanfare, the Queen, the Duke of Edinburgh enter the Royal Gallery as this sovereign procession makes its way towards the Prince's Chamber and towards the House of Lords itself. This procession in state, Anna, again, worth underlining, we're peering into the centuries of British history here, aren't we?
Yes, I mean, historically this was, as it were, the very, very front of the procession, because it used to be the case that all the members of the House of Lords would also have participated in the procession rather than just sitting in the chamber. So what we've got here, if you like, is the kind of front end of what would, up until the late 17th century, have been a much, much longer procession, and which would be coming here from Westminster Abbey, where again, in the early modern period, there was a service of thanksgiving before the actual state opening. But this little bit that we're seeing here is very much as it would have been right through the last 500 years or so.
So Her Majesty preparing to open the 4th session of the 13th Parliament of her reign. And here's a remarkable statistic for you. This is her 50th state opening of Parliament. She's missed just 2 in all her reign, in 1959 and 1963, when she was expecting 2 of her children, so that's excusable. Her Majesty and the Duke will take their places, and Her Majesty will take a place on the throne. And when she does so, she will signal that she's happy for everyone to take their seats, and then she will alert the Lord Great Chamberlain to give the signal.
My lords, pray be seated.
The signal is given, and the signal is received in central lobby by Black Rod. Black Rod is now on his way to the chamber of the House of Commons. This is probably one of the most famous parts of the day's ceremonial, because it's his job to summon the members of the House of Commons to go and listen to the Queen's speech. Before he arrives, the House of Commons will show who's boss, and they will slam the door in his face, and he will have to knock politely to gain admission.
Not at all.
So, Lieutenant General Sir Michael Wilcox, gentleman usher of the Black Rod, is allowed into the rather less respectful chamber of the House of Commons. He allows himself a wry smile, and he will summon the members.
Mr. Speaker, the Queen commands this honourable House to attend Her Majesty immediately in the House of Peers.
Now you've got a job to aspire to.
One or two noises off. I think it's a fair bet that Dennis Skinner, the Labour MP, was responsible for them. Couldn't quite make out the words, but anyway, the Speaker, Michael Martin, now leads his flock out of the chamber, along the corridor to the central lobby, and along the corridor into the Lord's lobby and into the chamber itself, just behind the barrier in the chamber so that they can listen to the speech. At this moment, Mr. Blair, of course, leads off for the government, and he's accompanied by Michael Howard, the Leader of the Opposition. Ian, I've always wanted to ask, what do you chat about on these occasions?
It's funny you should funny you should say that, because I was just thinking that's one of the most difficult moments, because you both come thinking about what you're going to be saying in a couple of hours, and now you've got to make small talk for the next sort of 150 yards. I can't remember, to be quite frank, and I wouldn't think the Prime Minister would either. Some inconsequential nonsense, I suspect, about how are you, or how's the family, or something like that.
But it's friendly.
Yeah, I mean, that's the irony about the House of Commons, and David will know, is that across the floor, actually, it's always very friendly. It's the people around you that sometimes you're less friendly with.
It's a bit of a rush, Roy, isn't it? I mean, people like to show that they're cool and not too keen, but actually some of these are very keen to get in, aren't they?
They are very keen. It's a moment of history for them. I mean, even people like me who are rather sceptical about this pageantry can't help being moved by it to a degree. So if you've got a chance to participate in it, well, you want to be there. You want to be near enough to hear what the Queen says.
And also, if you get in early enough, then you're on shot when
yes, that's also very important.
Motivating factor for MPs, always on shot.
So, Mr. Blair and Mr. Howard, and closely followed by Mr. Prescott and Mr. Ankram, Charles Kennedy, the Liberal Democrats, Gordon Brown, the Chancellor, walking with David Davis there, and a cross-section of the parties in the House of Commons represented in that first group.
Interestingly, there's no respect of ranks in there, because MPs don't sit in the chamber, they crowd in the lobbies, waiting, and they pick out who they think finally breaks the seniority point, and they just crush the rest of the shadow cabinet out of it.
And that lot will never get in. I mean,
they'll never get in. They won't even make it to the central lobby.
And it's fair to note, Roy, I think as well, that some don't bother to go in, do they? Some just wait to stay in the House of Commons.
Yes, which is a sensible thing to do in the sense that you get in the picture there as well, you see. The last time that Dennis Healey was member of the House of Commons, the last day, prorogation, I turned up with a neoconnect because I thought it was my duty to support the leader. And as we walked out, Dennis came from the back benches and charged me out of the way so that he could walk seconds to Dennis. I was very happy to let him do it. Typical piece of Healey behaviour.
The Speaker is there. They're ready for the Queen's speech. Prime Minister. And Mr. Prescott next to him. Canon Robert Wright, the Speaker's chaplain, who's also rector of St Margaret's Church here in Westminster. Dr. John Reid. And David Blunkett, the Home Secretary, who I think it's fair to say has quite a chunk of interest in this speech. Now we're waiting for the Lord Chancellor to deliver the speech to Her Majesty. And one of the points of interest today is that no one today will be walking backwards, which has been a feature of this ceremony in the past. The Lord Chancellor, we're told today, will do as everyone else is doing, including the Earl Marshal and the Lord Great Chamberlain, and walk forwards. The Earl Marshal there with his 4 bands of fur, just to prove that I wasn't talking nonsense earlier on, because of course he is the Duke of Norfolk and he's a very, very important man in these events, in all state occasions, royal weddings and funerals and state events. So Lord Faulkner prepares to deliver the speech to Her Majesty. And he turns. It may not look significant, but in parliamentary terms, believe me, it is.
My Lords and members of the House of Commons, my government will continue to pursue policies which entrench economic stability and promote growth and prosperity. My government will continue to reform the public services to ensure they provide more security and opportunity for all. My government attaches the highest importance to extending educational opportunity so that all individuals can realise their full potential and the country can benefit from the talents of all its people. A bill will be introduced to streamline the regime of school inspections to help raise standards for every child in every school.